Hello there. Today I'm here to talk to you about bell curves, self-evaluation, and goal setting. I'm Squire Kalahan Ridgeborn, almost a battle master, definitely a wizard, and I want to talk to you about how you can understand some really basic philosophy concepts and mathematic concepts and how that can help you become a better battle gamer. So the first thing I want to talk about is bell curves. What is a bell curve? A bell curve is a way of presenting data on a group of data points, right? And the way a bell curve operates is you take all of your data points and you find the average, and that's the dead center absolute average, right? And the way it operates is you end up with standard deviations. So if we look at this, when you have a group of people, and no matter what skill you're talking about, you can be talking about battle gaming, you can be talking about how good they are at Parcheesi, you could talk about like Super Bowl scores. It doesn't matter what you're really talking about there, but if you break it down, there's going to be an average to your data set, right? And that is 0. And then from there, you can look at standard deviations. And so the idea behind a bell curve is that your data points are going to be broken out into percentages like this, where you'd expect about 60 to 70% of your data points to be here in this middle section of the bell curve, and then you have positive and negative standard deviations. Okay, now standard deviation just means it's a big jump where you'll see a significant drop in the numbers, right? So if we have, if we were going to number these off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, the vast majority of people are going to be in that 4, 5 range. And then, you're going to have the bottom 0.1% and the top 0.1%. And the nice thing about a bell curve is that it's applicable in most situations, right? Obviously, there's going to be outliers, and those are going to be expressed out here on the far ends of the bell curve. But for the most part, people are going to find themselves somewhere in here. Now, what's this have to do with Amcard, right? Great question. When you do self-evaluation, you can look at the bell curve, and it'll help you understand where you are in comparison with other people. How can we do that? Well, the biggest thing for self-evaluation is you have to go into evaluation being honest and cold, okay? And this is a hard thing to do. Going into any kind of evaluation scenario, generally people either err on the side of pridefulness or humility, and you really have to put that aside. You can't have, you can't be down on yourself, but you also can't be saying you're the greatest thing ever when you're not, right? And then you also have to be cold about evaluation. You can't let emotions get into it. You can't think to yourself like, well, I feel like I want to be the best, and so that, will skew your results. So when you're doing self-evaluation, those are things to look at. For an external evaluation, you also need to seek honesty without humility and pride, and you need to seek that coldness without emotions. Because people, if you ask them for evaluation, if you don't be very clear that you're looking for really honest feedback, they might sugarcoat it. They might be nice to you, and that's not going to be helpful to you because you're not really going to know where you actually stand. So how can we take those principles and apply them to a bell curve? Well, we can do a self-evaluation by looking at the bell curve, and we can look over here at this bell curve and we can say, hey, I can see what's going on here, and I'm going to try to understand where I am in relation to other players, right? So I went ahead and did my own self-evaluation here. I evaluated 4 aspects of my gameplay. I looked at my melee fighting, my archery, my casting, and then my specialty class is wizard, so I looked specifically at my wizardry. And this is where I evaluated myself. I figure I'm probably at the low end of average for melee fighting. For my archery, I'm probably just a tiny bit better than average, and that's really hard to quantify. I don't do a ton of archery, but when I play with my kids in the front yard, I can usually hit them. So there's that for you. Probably just a little tiny bit better than average, right on that line. For casting, I said that in casting in general, I'm probably above average on that, in that first standard deviation pocket. And for wizardry, I felt like I'm also in that first standard deviation pocket. I feel like I'm definitely in the top 10% of wizards, and probably the top 15 to 20% of just standard casters, just based on where I honestly evaluate myself. Then I went and I asked a group of people. I didn't ask like my fighting company or anything. I asked a bunch of different people where they would evaluate me, and I have those averaged results here. So for my peers actually said that I'm a bit higher on the melee than I did. Because if you look at this here, I said that I was really, really low end of below average, and they rated me a little higher, closer to that average. Dead even on the archery, which I was pretty much exactly where I said. I gave myself a 51. I got a 50 out of them. The surpriser for me was they all put me in the top 10 for casting, and the top 3 to 5% for playing wizard specifically. So that might not be a pure data set, but this is the kind of thing that you can do to try to get a gauge on where you are as a player. Ask for that good, honest feedback. And then you can take that feedback and do something with it, because feedback without a plan or without being able to do anything is kind of useless to you, right? And that's where we're going to get into SMART goals. What is a SMART goal? Well, a SMART goal is, SMART is an acronym. It stands in for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And the SMART goals are something that I've done for decades at this point. All the way back when I was in middle school, we had to have a SMART goal for every quarter. And I thought these were just the dumbest dumb thing ever, because we always had to have a SMART goal, and they hyped on it so much. And really, it's actually a really good framework for figuring out what you're going to do, right? Because goals and goal setting can be really tricky. So the biggest thing you have to understand is the difference between a goal and an objective, right? An objective is the place you'd like to end up, and a goal is how you plan to get there. And it's a subtle difference, but it matters, right? So let me give you a real good example here. So I have an objective. I would like to be a battle knight. Things that I'm doing to try to become a battle knight. Well, there are steps along the way to being a battle knight, right? Before you can be a battle knight, you need to be a battle master. Before you can be a battle master, you need to go up all the award ranks for the orders of the battle. So your goals are how you're going to get there, right? And we'll talk about that in just a minute. When you're making a goal, your goal needs to be specific. You need to clearly define what you're going to do. It's the 5 W's and an H, right? Who, what, where, when, why, how. If your goal isn't specific, you're not going to know what you're trying to do, okay? It needs to be measurable. It needs to have a metric attached to it so you can know if you're making progress or being successful, right? If my goal is to just be healthier, that doesn't really have a metric attached to it. I don't know when I've achieved my goal. If I say my goal is to lose 10 pounds, well, I can step on the scale and know how much progress I'm making, right? Your goal needs to be attainable. It must be something you can do, and it needs to be something you can control. And this one right here is where a lot of people get into trouble with things. So the reason my goal is not to become a battle knight, but that's my objective, is because I can't control that. Awards and knighthoods and apprenticeships and all of those things are not things you can control. You can only control yourself, right? You can take responsibility for your own actions and your own choices, but you can't make other people do things. And so when you are making your goals, picking something that's actually something in your power to control, that's the important thing, right? Your goal needs to be relevant. You need to have an action plan on how you're actually going to execute this goal. It's not enough to say that I'm going to lose 10 pounds. It needs to be, I'm going to do that by doing this other thing, right? Mm-hmm. Creating the action plan. I'm going to get up every morning and exercise. Or I'm going to stop baking cookies. In academia, you can have a goal of saying, I want to get a 4.0, but your action plan might be, to get a 4.0, I'm going to study and do all these tests and everything, right? In AmpGuard, your goal could be anything, but if we look specifically at orders of the battle, how can you get more orders of the battle? How can you get those higher level awards? So you're going to have an action plan. We'll bring this all together in a minute here. Timely is the last thing here. You need to know when you've achieved or failed your goal. You need to have an end date picked out. You need to have a time frame for your goal. And that's really going to help you know how much progress you need to be making, right? So here's an example of a bad goal. I want to be a battle knight. Is that specific? Yeah, it's a pretty specific goal. If I end up with a belt with blue trim, I know that I've met the goal, so it's measurable, but is it obtainable? I would say that that's not obtainable. Not because I don't think it's impossible, but because it's not within my power to decide to become a battle knight, right? Other people have to look at my skill level and say, hey, that guy's doing things that we think are relevant. We're going to recommend him for awards. And then it goes to the circle of knights, and the knights will evaluate me and determine, this, that, and the other thing, if they think that I'd be a good fit. Is it relevant to my objective? Yeah, it's relevant, but is it timely? No, because there's no timetable attached to this. So here's an example of a good goal, right? In effort towards becoming a battle knight, I'll be at all kingdom level events this year. Is that specific? Yes. I am going to be at all kingdom level events this year. And it's immeasurable because how many events was I at? Did I miss any events? And this is a very attainable goal because showing up is my choice. I can choose to prioritize being at these kingdom level events where I could not choose to force the knight circle to accept me, right? And then it's relevant. Being at the kingdom events is going to help me gain notoriety on the battlefield. I will make friends there that can help me get better. And it will move me towards my goal slowly but surely. And then timely, yeah, I set it for a year. I said I'm going to be at every kingdom event this year. I'm going to be on all of those battlefields. And so that's a good goal there, right? So now, hopefully you understand a little more about how bell curves can help you self-evaluate, and then how you can take that evaluation and try to make a smart goal so that you can achieve your objectives. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.